Imagine facing one of the most challenging moments of your life, a surgery that you cannot avoid, while the people you trust the most, the ones you believed would always be there, turn away when you need them the most. Now, imagine the fear, the anxiety, and the weight of responsibility pressing down on you, knowing that two little lives depend entirely on you. What would you do? How would you survive the heartbreak, the disappointment, and the isolation? Today, I want to take you on a journey of resilience, courage, and unexpected revelations. It's a story about betrayal, about facing moments when those who should care refuse to step up, and about the quiet power of strength, determination, and unexpected support. By the end of this story, you'll see that even in our darkest moments, we have the power to rise, protect what matters most, and turn adversity into a lesson of courage and empowerment. Stay with me, because this is not just a story about struggle, it's a story about triumph, about discovering inner strength you didn't know you had, and about the priceless moments when truth and responsibility shine brighter than disappointment. When life becomes difficult, most people instinctively turn toward their families. From childhood, we are taught that family is our safety net, the group of people who will stand beside us when everything else feels uncertain. Trust in family does not appear overnight. It grows slowly through years of shared experiences, advice, and promises that we believe will hold firm when challenges arise. Because of this belief, when a serious problem appears in life, especially one involving health or personal crisis, many of us feel confident that our parents will be there to help without hesitation. Facing a difficult moment often reveals how deeply we depend on that trust. In times of normal routine, independence feels strong and manageable. People go about their responsibilities, balancing work, parenting, and personal struggles quietly. But when an unexpected hardship arrives, such as preparing for a medical procedure or a major life disruption, even the strongest individuals realize they cannot handle everything alone. It is in these moments that the idea of family support becomes more than a comforting thought, it becomes something essential. Trusting family during a vulnerable time also involves emotional openness. Admitting that help is needed requires humility and courage. Many people struggle with asking for support because they fear appearing weak or burdensome. Yet when the request is directed toward parents, the expectation often feels natural. Parents are typically viewed as the people who once protected, guided, and sacrificed for their children. Because of that history, it feels reasonable to believe they would step in again when circumstances demand it. The situation becomes even more delicate when children are involved. A parent who is facing a serious challenge must think not only about their own well-being, but also about the safety and comfort of their children. The responsibility does not pause simply because life becomes difficult. Every decision carries the weight of ensuring that the children are cared for, protected, and surrounded by stability. This responsibility strengthens the belief that trusted family members will offer support during such moments. The expectation of help also carries emotional memories from the past. Many people remember times when their parents gave advice, encouragement, or practical assistance during smaller challenges. Those memories reinforce the idea that the family bond is reliable. When a new crisis appears, the mind naturally returns to those earlier moments of support and assumes the same loyalty will be present again. Trust, therefore, becomes the foundation of the entire situation. It is not only about practical help, but also about emotional reassurance. Knowing that someone dependable is standing nearby can calm fears and make overwhelming problems feel manageable. When a person prepares to face a frightening moment in life, believing that family will stand beside them creates a sense of stability that feels almost unbreakable. Raising twins brings a unique blend of joy, responsibility, and constant motion that few people truly understand unless they have experienced it themselves. From the very beginning, life moves at double speed. Every moment that might normally involve one child suddenly requires attention to two, and the demands rarely arrive one at a time. Feeding, bathing, soothing, and comforting become carefully timed routines where balance is everything. Even the simplest daily tasks require planning, patience, and a great deal of energy. The early days are often filled with sleepless nights and a constant cycle of care. While many parents struggle with exhaustion when raising a single newborn, the challenge multiplies when there are two infants needing attention at the same time. One baby might be crying while the other is finally drifting to sleep, and the parent must learn to move quickly between them without letting either feel neglected. The house becomes a place where bottles, blankets, toys, and baby supplies seem to appear everywhere, reminders of the nonstop responsibility that defines each day. As the twins begin to grow, the challenges evolve rather than disappear. Toddlers are naturally curious, energetic, and eager to explore the world around them. With twins, that curiosity doubles, often sending them in different directions at the same moment. A parent quickly becomes skilled at watching two places at once, listening for two voices, and predicting two sets of unpredictable decisions. Safety becomes a constant priority, and even ordinary outings require careful preparation. Despite the exhaustion, raising twins also brings moments of remarkable connection. Watching two children grow side by side creates a bond that is fascinating to witness. They learn from each other, comfort each other, and often develop a quiet understanding that seems almost unspoken. A parent begins to notice small differences in personality, habits, and preferences, learning that even twins who share so much can still be wonderfully unique individuals. Financial responsibilities can also increase significantly. Clothing, food, childcare, medical appointments, and educational needs all arrive in pairs. Budgeting becomes an important skill, and every decision about time and resources must consider the needs of two growing children. Parents often find themselves carefully organizing schedules and finances to make sure both children receive equal attention and opportunity. Emotionally, raising twins requires resilience. There are days when fatigue feels overwhelming and moments when self-doubt appears quietly in the background. Yet the love that develops between parent and children grows just as quickly as the responsibilities. Every laugh, every small milestone, and every shared moment becomes twice as meaningful, reminding the parent why the constant effort is worth it. The experience shapes patience, strength, and a deep sense of commitment that influences every part of daily life. The announcement of an upcoming surgery often arrives as a moment that changes the rhythm of everyday life. What once felt predictable suddenly becomes uncertain, and the ordinary routines that filled each day begin to revolve around medical appointments, discussions with doctors, and quiet moments of reflection. Hearing that a surgical procedure is necessary brings a mixture of emotions that can be difficult to process all at once. There is concern about health, worry about the procedure itself, and a deep awareness that life may temporarily shift in ways that are not easy to control. When someone learns that surgery is unavoidable, the mind immediately begins to consider practical responsibilities. Work schedules, household duties, and personal commitments must all be rearranged. Recovery time becomes a central focus, and questions about how daily life will continue during that period start to appear. For a parent, these thoughts become even more pressing because the well-being of children must remain the highest priority, even while facing a serious medical situation. Medical conversations begin to play an important role during this time. Doctors explain the reason for the procedure, what it involves, and how long recovery may take. These discussions often include details about preparation, hospital visits, and possible outcomes. Listening to these explanations can feel overwhelming because each piece of information carries emotional weight. Even when the surgery is routine or necessary for long-term health, the idea of entering an operating room naturally creates anxiety. Preparation for the surgery gradually becomes part of daily life. Appointments for tests and evaluations may be scheduled to ensure everything is ready for the procedure. Instructions about medication, diet, and rest may follow, requiring careful attention. These preparations can make the upcoming event feel more real with each passing day, turning what once sounded like distant news into a clearly approaching moment. During this period, a person often becomes more aware of how vulnerable they feel. Health challenges have a way of reminding people that strength is not limitless. Tasks that once felt simple can suddenly seem uncertain when the future includes hospital visits and recovery time. Even strong individuals who normally manage everything independently may find themselves reflecting more deeply on the support systems around them. For a parent, the announcement of surgery carries an additional emotional layer. Beyond personal health concerns, there is a constant awareness that children depend on stability and care. Thoughts about who will look after them, how routines will continue, and whether they will feel safe and supported become just as important as the medical procedure itself. The approaching surgery becomes not only a personal health event, but also a moment that affects the entire family dynamic, shaping decisions, conversations, and expectations in the days leading up to it. As the date of the surgery draws closer, fear often begins to settle quietly into the mind. It does not always appear all at once or in dramatic waves. Instead, it grows gradually, showing up in small moments of silence, late at night when everything is still, or during ordinary tasks when thoughts begin to wander toward the unknown. Even people who try to stay strong for those around them may feel this quiet anxiety building beneath the surface. Preparing for surgery means facing a situation where control is limited. In daily life, most people are used to solving problems themselves and managing their responsibilities with confidence. Surgery changes that dynamic completely. At some point, a person must place their trust in medical professionals, hospital staff, and procedures they cannot personally oversee. This realization can make even the most confident individual feel exposed and vulnerable. Physical concerns are only one part of the fear. Questions about the procedure itself often circulate in the mind. People may wonder how long the surgery will take, how painful the recovery might be, and whether everything will go as planned. Even when doctors provide reassurance and explain that the procedure is necessary or routine, the emotional weight of the experience can still feel overwhelming. The mind naturally imagines possibilities, and uncertainty can make those thoughts difficult to quiet. Vulnerability also comes from the temporary loss of independence. Many people take pride in handling their own responsibilities, caring for their families, and maintaining a sense of stability in their daily lives. Facing surgery means acknowledging that there will be a period when help is necessary. For someone who is used to being the one others rely on, accepting that role reversal can feel uncomfortable and emotionally challenging. The emotional impact becomes even stronger when children are involved. A parent preparing for surgery may find their thoughts returning repeatedly to their children's well-being. Simple moments such as watching them play, helping them with small tasks, or listening to their laughter may suddenly feel more meaningful. At the same time, there may be quiet worries about whether everything will continue smoothly while recovery is taking place. This mixture of love, responsibility, and uncertainty can intensify the emotional experience. A parent may try to remain calm on the outside so the children do not sense the worry, but internally the weight of the situation can feel heavy. The desire to protect and care for the children remains constant, even while preparing to face a moment that requires stepping away from those responsibilities for a short time. In these moments, vulnerability becomes impossible to ignore. The strong image people often present to the world begins to soften, revealing the very human reality that everyone needs reassurance and support during difficult times. In the midst of preparing for a difficult surgery, hope naturally begins to focus on the people who have always been considered the closest and most dependable. When someone faces a situation that limits their ability to manage daily responsibilities, the first thought is often about family stepping in to help. For many individuals, parents represent that sense of security. They are the people who once provided care, protection, and guidance, so turning to them during a challenging moment feels like the most natural choice. This hope is not simply based on convenience. It grows from years of emotional connection and shared history. Parents are often viewed as the foundation of the family structure, the ones who taught values, solved problems, and supported their children through earlier stages of life. Because of that long-standing relationship, believing they will offer help during a time of vulnerability feels almost unquestionable. The expectation is not necessarily that they will solve every problem, but that they will offer stability and reassurance when it is needed most. For a parent raising twins, the need for support becomes even more important when facing surgery. Daily life with two young children already demands constant attention and energy. Preparing for a medical procedure means knowing that there will be a period of recovery when normal routines cannot continue in the same way. Feeding schedules, bedtime routines, playtime, and basic care all require someone who can step in and maintain a sense of normalcy for the children. Naturally, the mind turns to those who are trusted the most. Imagining parents helping during this time often brings a sense of comfort. It creates a mental picture where the children remain in a familiar environment surrounded by people who already know and love them. This thought can ease some of the anxiety about the upcoming surgery because it reassures the parent that the children will not feel abandoned or confused while their routine temporarily changes. Knowing that someone dependable is present allows the person facing surgery to focus more fully on their own recovery. The hope for support also carries emotional meaning beyond practical help. It represents a continuation of family unity. When difficulties arise, families are expected to come together, reinforcing the idea that no one has to face hardship alone. The belief that parents will step forward in a moment like this reflects trust in those family bonds. This expectation grows stronger as the surgery date approaches. Each day brings new reminders of the responsibilities that will need attention during recovery, and each reminder strengthens the belief that the family will respond with understanding and care. the thought of parents helping with the twins becomes more than a simple plan, it becomes a symbol of the support system that has always been assumed to exist. Asking for help is rarely as simple as it sounds, especially for someone who is used to managing life independently. Many parents develop a strong sense of responsibility and pride in their ability to handle daily challenges on their own. They become accustomed to solving problems quietly, organizing schedules, and ensuring that their children's needs are always met. Because of this mindset, reaching a point where help must be requested can feel emotionally complicated. The courage to ask often begins with an internal struggle. A person may spend days or even weeks thinking about whether they truly need assistance. They might replay the situation in their mind repeatedly, weighing different possibilities and wondering if there is any way to manage everything alone. Pride, self-reliance, and fear of appearing like a burden can make the decision feel heavier than expected. In the context of preparing for surgery, the need for support becomes difficult to ignore. Recovery requires rest and limited physical activity, which means normal responsibilities cannot be handled in the usual way. For a parent raising twins, this reality becomes even clearer. Two young children require attention throughout the day, and their needs cannot simply pause while someone heals from a medical procedure. This awareness slowly pushes aside the hesitation and brings the person closer to accepting that help must be requested. Even after recognizing the need for assistance, the act of asking still requires emotional strength. The conversation itself can feel intimidating because it involves revealing vulnerability. It means openly admitting that circumstances have created a situation where support is necessary. For someone who is used to being the caregiver, the provider, or the problem solver, shifting into the role of the one who needs help can feel unfamiliar. When the moment finally arrives to ask, the approach is often careful and thoughtful. Words may be chosen slowly, with a mixture of hope and uncertainty behind them. The person may try to explain the situation clearly, describing the upcoming surgery, the recovery period, and the challenges of caring for the twins during that time. There is often a quiet expectation that the request will be understood, without needing to justify it too much. Emotionally, this step represents trust. Asking parents for help means believing that they will respond with empathy and willingness. It reflects the belief that family members care about each other's well-being and will step forward when someone is facing a difficult moment. The courage involved in asking does not come from weakness but from the willingness to be honest about one's situation. In that moment, the request carries more than practical meaning. It holds hope, vulnerability, and the expectation that family bonds will prove reliable when support is truly needed. When the request for help is finally spoken aloud, there is usually a quiet expectation that the answer will be supportive. The person asking has already spent time gathering courage, preparing their words, and trusting that the family bond will respond with understanding. Because of this, the moment when the parents refuse to care for the twins feels completely unexpected. Instead of the reassurance that was hoped for, the response creates a sudden emotional shift that is difficult to process. The refusal does not always arrive with harsh words or dramatic confrontation. Sometimes it appears in calm explanations, excuses, or statements about personal limitations. Yet even when the tone seems ordinary, the impact can feel heavy. The person who asked for help may struggle to understand what they are hearing, because the response does not match the expectation they had built in their mind. The conversation that was supposed to bring relief suddenly introduces confusion and disappointment. At first, there may be a brief moment of silence while the meaning of the refusal settles in. The person might replay the words in their mind, wondering if they misunderstood or if there is still a chance the answer might change. It can feel difficult to accept that the support they believed would naturally appear is simply not there. This realization can make the situation feel more isolating than before the request was made. The refusal also creates a sense of emotional distance. Parents are often viewed as the people who offer protection and guidance, especially during moments of vulnerability. Hearing them decline a request that involves both health and the care of young children challenges that long-held belief. The situation begins to feel less like a temporary problem and more like a moment where expectations about family roles are being tested. Practical concerns quickly follow the emotional reaction. Without the help that was hoped for, the question of who will care for the twins during surgery and recovery becomes urgent. The parent must begin thinking about alternatives while still dealing with the emotional impact of the refusal. This adds pressure to an already stressful situation, making the upcoming surgery feel even more overwhelming. The experience can also lead to quiet reflection about past interactions within the family. Small memories may surface, moments where support felt uncertain or where responsibilities were not shared equally. These thoughts do not always bring clear answers, but they contribute to the growing awareness that the situation is more complicated than it first appeared. What began as a hopeful conversation gradually transforms into a moment of realization, where the expectation of unconditional family support is confronted by a response that feels surprisingly distant. The moment the refusal truly sinks in, the emotional reaction often shifts from confusion to deep shock. When someone has trusted their parents to provide support during a vulnerable time, hearing them decline can feel almost unreal at first. The mind may struggle to process the situation because it contradicts a belief that has existed for years. Parents are usually seen as the people who step forward in difficult moments, so realizing that this expectation will not be fulfilled creates a powerful emotional impact. Shock often appears as a sudden silence inside the mind. Words that were prepared for the conversation no longer seem to matter, and the person may find themselves unsure of how to respond. They may look for signs that the situation is being misunderstood, hoping that perhaps the refusal is temporary, or that something was said incorrectly. In those first moments, it can feel as though the ground beneath their expectations has shifted. As the shock begins to settle, heartbreak slowly takes its place. The pain does not only come from the practical problem of finding help for the twins, it comes from the emotional meaning behind the refusal. The person had placed trust in the idea that their parents would care about their well-being and the safety of the children during a difficult medical moment. When that trust appears to be rejected, it creates a feeling of emotional distance that can be deeply hurtful. Heartbreak often carries a quiet weight rather than dramatic expression. The person may try to remain calm on the outside, even while a mixture of disappointment and sadness grows internally. Thoughts begin to move through memories of the relationship with their parents, searching for reassurance that the bond still holds the same meaning it once did. Each reflection can make the situation feel heavier, because the present moment seems so different from what was expected. The presence of the twins adds another layer to the emotional experience. A parent naturally wants their children to be surrounded by love and support from the entire family. Realizing that the grandparents are unwilling to step in during an important moment can create concern about what this means for those relationships in the future. The disappointment is not only personal, it also touches the hope that the children would grow up feeling supported by their extended family. At the same time, the approaching surgery remains a reality that cannot be ignored. The person must continue preparing for a medical procedure while carrying the emotional weight of what just happened. Balancing these feelings becomes difficult, as the mind moves between personal hurt and the practical responsibilities that still need attention before the surgery date arrives. After the shock and heartbreak settle into something more real, a deeper feeling begins to emerge, the sense of being abandoned by the very people who were expected to help. This realization does not usually appear all at once. It grows gradually as the conversation and its meaning are replayed in the mind. The person begins to understand that the refusal was not a misunderstanding or a temporary hesitation, but a clear decision not to step in during a moment of vulnerability. Feeling abandoned by parents carries a unique emotional weight. Throughout life, many people grow up believing that their parents will remain a source of support no matter what challenges appear. Even as adults, that belief often stays quietly in the background, shaping expectations about family relationships. When a difficult situation arises, especially one involving health and the care of children, the assumption that parents will help feels almost automatic. When that assumption is broken, the emotional impact can feel much larger than the situation itself. The feeling of abandonment often brings a strong sense of loneliness. The person may begin to realize that the support system they believed existed is not as reliable as they once thought. This can create a sudden awareness that they are facing a major life event with far less help than expected. The upcoming surgery, which already carried anxiety, now feels even heavier because it must be managed without the assistance that once seemed certain. At the same time, thoughts about responsibility toward the twins remain constant. A parent cannot simply focus on personal disappointment when two children depend on stability and care. The need to protect them from stress or uncertainty becomes the top priority. This responsibility pushes the person to remain composed, even while the emotional pain of the situation continues quietly inside. The sense of abandonment also encourages reflection on the nature of family relationships. The person may begin to question what family support truly means, and whether it has always been as dependable as they once believed. Memories of past interactions may start to surface, sometimes revealing patterns that were not fully noticed before. These reflections do not always bring clear answers, but they contribute to a growing awareness that expectations and reality can sometimes be very different. Despite the emotional difficulty, life's responsibilities do not pause. The surgery date continues to approach, and practical decisions must still be made. The parent must begin searching for other solutions, even while processing the realization that the people they trusted most have chosen not to stand beside them during one of the most vulnerable moments of their life. As the emotional weight of the situation continues to settle, a difficult realization begins to take shape. Not all family support is guaranteed. This understanding can feel uncomfortable because it challenges a belief many people carry throughout their lives. From childhood, family is often presented as the group that will always stand together during hardships. Stories, traditions, and personal experiences reinforce the idea that when life becomes difficult, relatives will naturally come together to help one another. When reality does not follow that expectation, it forces a person to rethink what family support truly means. This realization does not happen instantly. At first, the mind may try to explain the refusal in different ways. A person might wonder if their parents were simply having a difficult day, if there was a misunderstanding, or if the situation might change with time. These thoughts can act as a temporary shield against the emotional impact. However, as time passes and the circumstances remain the same, the truth becomes harder to ignore. The hoped-for support is simply not going to appear. Understanding that family support is not automatic can feel both painful and eye-opening. It reveals that relationships even within families are influenced by individual choices, priorities, and personal boundaries. The titles of parent, child, or grandparent do not always guarantee certain actions. Sometimes people who are expected to help may step back, while others who were not originally considered may step forward. This awareness also begins to reshape the way the person views independence. When the assumption of family support fades, the importance of personal strength and alternative support systems becomes clearer. Friends, neighbors, or other relatives may begin to play roles that were not previously considered. The person may start thinking more broadly about where help can come from, rather than relying on a single expected source. Emotionally, this realization can create a mix of disappointment and clarity. Disappointment comes from recognizing that the family bond did not function in the way it was believed to. At the same time, clarity begins to appear because the person is no longer waiting for something that may never happen. Accepting the truth allows the focus to shift toward finding practical solutions and protecting what matters most. The presence of the twins makes this realization even more meaningful. Their well-being cannot depend on uncertain expectations. They need stability, care, and consistency, regardless of how other family members choose to respond. Recognizing that support must sometimes be built rather than assumed encourages the parent to think more carefully about the people who truly show up when help is needed. Once the realization sets in that the expected help will not be available, a new kind of pressure begins to build. The surgery date is approaching, and the question of who will care for the twins during that time suddenly becomes urgent. What once felt like a simple arrangement with trusted family members now turns into a complicated problem that must be solved quickly. Time, which once seemed manageable, begins to feel limited, and every passing day adds to the sense of urgency. The challenge is not only about finding someone who is willing to help, but also about ensuring that the twins will feel safe and comfortable while their parent is away for surgery and recovery. Young children depend heavily on routine and familiar faces. A sudden change in their environment or caregivers can create confusion and anxiety for them. Because of this, the parent must carefully consider who might be able to step in and provide the same level of attention and care. Searching for last-minute childcare often involves reaching out to different people and explaining the situation repeatedly. Friends, relatives, neighbors, or trusted caregivers may all come to mind as possible options. Each conversation requires honesty about the circumstances, including the upcoming surgery and the temporary inability to handle normal parenting responsibilities. These conversations can feel emotionally exhausting because they remind the parent again and again of the difficult situation they are facing. Practical concerns also begin to surface during the search. Whoever agrees to help must be able to manage the twins' daily routines, from meals and naps to playtime and bedtime. Instructions may need to be written down, schedules explained, and important information about the children shared. The parent may spend hours thinking through every detail to ensure that nothing important is overlooked while they are recovering. At the same time, the emotional stress of preparing for surgery has not disappeared. The person must balance medical appointments, hospital preparations, and personal worries while also organizing childcare arrangements. Handling all of these responsibilities at once can feel overwhelming, especially when the support that was originally expected is no longer available. Despite the stress, the parents' determination to protect their children remains strong. Every decision about childcare is made with the twins' well-being as the highest priority. The parent wants to ensure that even during a difficult medical moment, the children will continue to feel cared for and secure. This determination pushes them to keep searching for solutions, even when the situation feels rushed and uncertain. Experiencing betrayal during a health crisis creates a kind of emotional strain that can be difficult to describe. When someone is already facing the anxiety of an upcoming surgery, their mental and emotional energy is naturally focused on preparing for the medical challenge ahead. They are thinking about the procedure, the recovery process, and the responsibilities that will temporarily fall out of their control. In the middle of this fragile moment, discovering that trusted family members are unwilling to help can intensify the stress in ways that are both immediate and lasting. The emotional toll begins with the feeling that a layer of security has been removed at the worst possible time. Preparing for surgery often requires a person to accept vulnerability and trust others with certain responsibilities. When that trust is broken, the sense of vulnerability becomes even stronger. Instead of feeling supported while facing a difficult medical moment, the person may begin to feel isolated and uncertain about who they can truly rely on. Stress can begin to appear in different ways throughout daily life. Simple tasks may feel heavier than usual because the mind is constantly processing both the health situation and the emotional disappointment. Thoughts may return repeatedly to the conversation where help was refused, replaying the words and trying to understand why things happened the way they did. This mental loop can make it harder to concentrate on practical preparations or to feel calm about the upcoming surgery. Physical exhaustion can also follow emotional strain. When someone carries disappointment, worry, and responsibility at the same time, it can affect sleep, focus, and overall energy levels. Nights may become restless as the mind moves between concerns about the medical procedure and the unresolved feelings about the lack of support. Even moments that should feel peaceful can become filled with quiet tension. For a parent, the emotional toll becomes even more complicated because the presence of children requires constant composure. The twins still need attention, care, and reassurance each day. Their routines continue, and their happiness remains important. This means the parent must often hide their stress and disappointment so that the children do not feel the emotional weight of the situation. Maintaining that calm exterior while carrying inner frustration and sadness can be incredibly draining. At the same time, the approaching surgery remains unavoidable. Medical appointments, instructions from doctors, and final preparations continue to move forward according to schedule. The person must keep managing these responsibilities even while coping with the emotional impact of feeling betrayed. Balancing personal pain with practical preparation creates a heavy emotional burden that follows them through each step leading up to the surgery. After the immediate emotions of shock, disappointment, and stress begin to settle, the mind often drifts toward reflection. Moments of quiet thinking can bring back memories from the past, especially interactions with family that once seemed ordinary but now appear in a different light. When someone experiences a painful refusal during a vulnerable time, it can prompt them to reconsider earlier situations and ask themselves whether the support in the relationship had always been balanced. These reflections do not necessarily happen with anger at first. Instead, they often begin with curiosity and confusion. A person may start recalling small moments when they offered help, made sacrifices, or showed up for family members during their own difficult times. These memories might include providing emotional comfort, helping with responsibilities, or rearranging personal plans to support others. At the time, these actions may have felt natural, simply part of being a caring family member. However, when the current situation reveals a lack of support in return, those earlier memories begin to feel different. The person might wonder whether they had always been the one stepping forward while others remained in the background. Situations that once seemed minor may now appear as part of a pattern, suggesting that the relationship may not have been as equal as it once seemed. This reflection can be emotionally complicated because it involves questioning long-held assumptions about family bonds. Many people grow up believing that family relationships are built on mutual care and responsibility. Realizing that the balance may have been uneven can create a mix of sadness and understanding. It becomes clear that good intentions and past efforts do not always guarantee that others will respond in the same way when the roles are reversed. At the same time, the person may begin to recognize their own strength within those past experiences. Remembering the times they helped others reveals a consistent pattern of generosity, responsibility, and willingness to stand beside family members in difficult moments. While the current situation may highlight a painful lack of reciprocity, it also shows the character and reliability that the person themselves has demonstrated over time. These reflections gradually shape a deeper awareness of the relationship dynamic. Instead of viewing the refusal as a single isolated moment, the person begins to understand it as part of a broader pattern of behavior. This awareness does not immediately erase the pain, but it offers a clearer perspective on the situation. By looking back at past moments with new understanding, the person starts to see the reality of the relationship more clearly than before. After the waves of disappointment and reflection pass through the mind, a quiet but important decision begins to form. Despite the hurt and uncertainty, there is a realization that giving in to frustration will not solve the immediate problems ahead. The upcoming surgery still needs to happen, and the twins still depend on stability, care, and reassurance every single day. In that moment, the focus slowly shifts from what others failed to do toward what must be done to keep moving forward. Staying strong for the children becomes the central motivation. Young children are sensitive to emotional changes around them, even when they cannot fully understand the situation. They notice tone of voice, facial expressions, and the overall atmosphere in the home. Because of this, the parent recognizes the importance of maintaining a sense of calm and normalcy for them. Even when emotions feel heavy inside, the priority becomes protecting the children from that stress. This decision to remain strong does not mean the pain disappears. The disappointment and sense of betrayal may still linger quietly in the background. However, strength in this situation comes from choosing not to let those emotions take control of every action. The parent begins to direct their energy toward practical solutions and preparation, rather than dwelling only on what went wrong. Daily routines with the twins continue to play an important role in maintaining this strength. Preparing meals, helping them get ready for the day, playing with them, and guiding them through their normal schedule provides moments of stability. These small activities become reminders of what truly matters and why it is important to stay focused and determined. Each moment spent caring for the children reinforces the commitment to overcome the situation. The approaching surgery still creates anxiety, but the mindset begins to change slightly. Instead of facing it with the expectation that others will solve the problems, the parent begins to rely more on personal resilience and resourcefulness. This shift does not eliminate the need for help, but it encourages the search for solutions beyond the original expectations. Strength also grows from the understanding that difficult experiences can reveal hidden abilities. Situations that once seemed overwhelming can sometimes be managed through determination, careful planning, and emotional endurance. The parent begins to recognize that while the support they hoped for did not appear, they still possess the ability to face the challenge ahead. Through this determination, the focus remains firmly on the well-being of the twins and the need to navigate the upcoming surgery with courage and responsibility. Just when the situation begins to feel overwhelming and solutions seem limited, an unexpected moment of support can appear from someone who was not originally part of the plan. In difficult situations, help sometimes comes from places that were not first considered. When a person has spent so much time hoping for support from certain family members, it can be surprising when another relative or individual steps forward with genuine concern and willingness to help. This unexpected intervention often begins with a simple observation. Someone notices the stress, the exhaustion, or the quiet struggle that has been unfolding. They may see the effort being made to manage everything alone while preparing for surgery and caring for the twins at the same time. Sometimes people who are slightly removed from the immediate conflict can view the situation more clearly and recognize that something is not right. When this person chooses to step in, their involvement can change the emotional atmosphere of the entire situation. The parent who has been feeling isolated suddenly realizes that not everyone is indifferent to their struggle. Even a few words of concern or an offer to listen can bring a sense of relief that had been missing for days. the feeling of being completely alone begins to fade as the presence of support becomes real. The intervention may also involve asking questions about what exactly is happening. By understanding the circumstances surrounding the upcoming surgery and the challenge of finding care for the twins, the person offering help begins to see the seriousness of the situation. Their response is often calm but firm, driven by a sense that family members should not face such difficulties without support. This moment can feel powerful because it contrasts strongly with the earlier refusal. Instead of excuses or distance, the new presence brings empathy and clarity. The person stepping forward may express concern not only for the parent's health but also for the well-being of the twins. Their willingness to acknowledge the situation creates a sense of validation that the parent's struggle is real and deserving of attention. Emotionally, this unexpected support can restore a small sense of balance. While the disappointment with others may still exist, the realization that someone is willing to stand up and recognize the problem changes the perspective. It reminds the parent that family relationships are not always defined by the people who disappoint them, but also by those who choose to act when it truly matters. When someone finally steps into the situation, after seeing what has been happening, the atmosphere often shifts toward a calm but meaningful confrontation. This type of confrontation is not driven by shouting or dramatic conflict. Instead, it carries a quiet firmness that makes the moment feel serious. The person who intervenes understands the weight of the situation and chooses to address it directly, bringing attention to what has taken place and how it has affected everyone involved. The calmness of the confrontation is what gives it strength. Rather than reacting emotionally or accusing anyone harshly, the conversation unfolds in a steady and thoughtful way. The focus remains on the facts of the situation: a parent facing surgery, two young children who need care, and the refusal of help from those who are expected to provide it. By presenting the situation clearly, the person intervening makes it difficult for others to ignore the reality of what has happened. In moments like this, the power of the conversation often lies in honesty. The issues that had been quietly lingering beneath the surface are finally spoken aloud. Questions may be asked about why support was not offered and what responsibilities family members have toward one another during times of hardship. Because the discussion remains controlled and respectful, the words carry more weight than an emotional outburst. This type of confrontation can create a noticeable shift in the room. People who had previously been comfortable with their decision may begin to feel the pressure of accountability. Hearing the situation described openly forces them to see it from a different perspective. What might have seemed like a personal choice before now appears within the larger context of family responsibility and compassion. For the parent who has been struggling, witnessing this moment can feel both surprising and validating. The emotions they have been carrying privately are now acknowledged in front of others. Someone has recognized the unfairness of the situation and has chosen to speak about it openly. This recognition can provide a sense of relief. Even though the tension of the confrontation remains present, the conversation does not need to be loud to be powerful. Sometimes the most meaningful confrontations are the ones where each word is delivered with calm clarity. In that quiet firmness, the truth of the situation becomes impossible to overlook, and the dynamic between everyone involved begins to shift as the reality of their choices is brought into the open. As the calm confrontation continues, the conversation gradually moves toward revealing deeper truths about responsibility and family loyalty. When someone brings a difficult situation into the open, it often encourages others to reflect on the values that guide their actions. In this moment, the discussion is no longer only about a single request for help. It begins to touch on larger ideas about what it truly means to support family members when they face hardship. The truth about responsibility starts to appear when the situation is described honestly and clearly. A parent is preparing for surgery, a medical moment that requires vulnerability and recovery time. Two young children depend on stability and care during that period. When these simple facts are placed side by side, the expectation of family support becomes easier for everyone to understand. The conversation reveals that responsibility within a family is not only about personal convenience but also about stepping forward when someone close is facing a genuine challenge. Family loyalty also becomes part of the discussion. Loyalty does not always require grand gestures or dramatic sacrifices. Often it appears in small but meaningful actions, such as offering time, providing reassurance, or helping to carry responsibilities during difficult moments. When someone reminds the group of these values, it can highlight the difference between what was expected and what actually happened. The truths being spoken may not always be comfortable to hear. People who previously justified their decisions might begin to recognize how their actions appear from another perspective. A refusal that once seemed like a simple choice may now be seen as a moment where empathy and support could have made a significant difference. Hearing these truths expressed calmly can make the situation feel more serious because the focus remains on the reality of the circumstances rather than on emotional arguments. For the parent who has been struggling, these words bring a sense of recognition. The difficulties they have been carrying quietly are now acknowledged in front of others. Someone has articulated the fairness of expecting help in such a situation, and that acknowledgement can feel validating after days of uncertainty and disappointment. As the truths about responsibility and loyalty are spoken, the atmosphere in the room often becomes more reflective. The conversation encourages everyone present to think about their roles within the family and the choices they have made. In that moment, the situation becomes more than a personal disagreement and begins to reveal the deeper principles that shape how families support one another during times of need. As the truths about responsibility and family loyalty are voiced, a subtle but undeniable discomfort often begins to appear on the faces of those who had previously refused to help. This discomfort is not always loud or dramatic. It can manifest in small, almost imperceptible ways: an uneasy shift in posture, a quick glance away, or a sudden pause before responding. The presence of someone who calmly highlights the expectations of support and the realities of the situation makes it difficult for them to maintain their previous composure. The source of this discomfort comes from accountability. For the first time, the refusal is not quietly accepted or ignored, it is being examined openly. The choices that seemed inconsequential before are now under scrutiny, and the emotional weight of the situation becomes unavoidable. This can create an internal tension, as individuals are forced to reconcile their actions with the principles of fairness, empathy, and family responsibility that are being clearly articulated in front of them. Often, the realization that their decision has consequences brings a mixture of emotions, guilt, defensiveness, or even shame. These feelings are amplified by the presence of witnesses who understand the context and significance of the refusal. The parent preparing for surgery and the person who intervened create a situation where the truth of the moment is undeniable. There is no way to ignore the impact their choice has had on both the parent and the twins, and that clarity can be uncomfortable to face. Discomfort also stems from empathy. As the conversation unfolds, those who refused may begin to see the situation from another perspective: the vulnerability of the parent, the dependence of the children, and the stress of managing everything alone. Even if they initially rationalize their refusal, the calm but firm articulation of the circumstances can make them recognize the emotional and practical consequences of their inaction. This discomfort serves an important purpose. It forces reflection, creating an opportunity for growth and awareness. People often learn more about themselves and their relationships when confronted with the consequences of their choices in a way that cannot be dismissed. The uneasy recognition of what was expected versus what was delivered can shift attitudes and behavior over time, even if it does not result in immediate apologies or changes. In the context of the family dynamic, this moment marks a turning point. It is no longer just about the refusal itself, but about the larger implications of neglecting responsibility and failing to show support when it is needed most. The discomfort on their faces is a silent acknowledgement that the situation has revealed something important, and that recognition changes the emotional landscape of the room. As the discomfort of accountability grows, the room often shifts into a profound silence. Words that were once easily spoken or dismissed now hang in the air, unchallenged and heavy with meaning. The weight of the situation settles on everyone present, and for a moment, all distractions fade. The silence itself becomes a form of acknowledgement, a reflection of the realization that actions, or inactions, carry consequences that cannot be ignored. In this quiet, the refusal that initially seemed insignificant transforms into something much more serious. The gravity of neglecting responsibility becomes clear. Everyone witnesses the tension between expectation and reality, between what should have been done and what was actually chosen. The parent preparing for surgery, who had quietly endured stress and uncertainty, now holds a position of moral clarity. Their struggle and vulnerability are undeniable, and the room cannot dismiss the emotional truth of the moment. This silence is more than an absence of noise, it is an emotional pause that forces reflection. Those who had previously refused to help may feel the weight of judgment without a word being spoken. Their earlier justification, excuses, or indifference no longer shield them from the reality of the situation. The lack of immediate distraction allows the emotional impact of their choices to settle fully. Every glance, every hesitation, and every unspoken thought becomes part of the acknowledgement of what has occurred. The power of this silence is heightened by the presence of someone who intervened to bring the truth to light. Their calm, measured words may have already shifted the emotional tone, but now the quiet itself reinforces the message. Without needing to argue or confront further, the reality of neglect is communicated simply through presence and observation. The unspoken acknowledgement can be far more piercing than any vocal accusation because it leaves no room for denial. For the parent, this moment carries a subtle but important satisfaction. It is not revenge in the traditional sense, but a recognition that the truth has been seen and cannot be ignored. The emotional weight of having been ignored or dismissed by the parents is now shared with witnesses, making the refusal a visible part of the family dynamic rather than a private, unspoken wound. In this suspended silence, the dynamics of accountability and responsibility crystallize. Actions are evaluated not by what was intended, but by their real impact. The quiet becomes a mirror, reflecting the consequences of choices and emphasizing that moments of neglect, however small they seemed, have tangible and undeniable effects. It is a moment where the reality of responsibility is fully recognized, leaving no room for avoidance. In that moment when the silence settles and the weight of the situation becomes undeniable, a subtle shift begins to occur, one that turns the emotional tide in an unexpected way. The parent who had been struggling with fear, anxiety, and uncertainty now observes the faces of those who initially refused help, and a quiet sense of justice begins to emerge. It is not loud or vindictive, but rather a recognition that actions have consequences and that the truth of the situation has finally been seen. The realization that the roles have shifted brings a complex mix of emotions. The people who once held power by choosing inaction now face the undeniable moral weight of their decision. Their earlier confidence, grounded in the belief that the parent would manage regardless, begins to erode under the pressure of clarity and observation. What once felt like ordinary choice is now recognized as neglect, and the subtle tension in the room underscores this truth without the need for confrontation. This turning of the tables is amplified by the calm dignity of the parent. There is no need for anger or dramatic gestures. The strength comes from composure and resolve. By maintaining focus on the twins' needs and the upcoming surgery, the parent demonstrates both responsibility and resilience. Their poise contrasts sharply with the discomfort and unease of those who initially refused support, making the consequences of their earlier choices all the more evident. The moment also carries a profound psychological impact. People who are confronted with their neglect or failure in such a visible yet controlled manner often experience a mixture of guilt, embarrassment, and awareness. They become conscious that their refusal is no longer a private decision, but something that has tangible effects on others' lives, particularly on vulnerable children and a parent in need. That awareness, paired with the quiet strength displayed in front of them, reinforces the sense that choices matter and that accountability cannot be ignored. For the parent, this moment is emotionally satisfying in a quiet, restorative way. It is not about humiliation or revenge. It is about witnessing the recognition of truth and the subtle acknowledgement that the situation has exposed an imbalance in responsibility. It provides a sense of closure and validation, confirming that the struggle, planning, and perseverance are not invisible or unnoticed. In this shift, the emotional dynamics of the room have been transformed. The parents' composure and focus highlight the fairness of responsibility and the importance of family loyalty, while those who initially refused support are forced to reckon with the reality of their choices. The moment becomes a testament to the principle that actions, or the absence of them, carry weight, and that sometimes the quiet demonstration of integrity and resilience speaks louder than any argument or confrontation ever could. Once the subtle turning of the tables occurs, the parent begins to recognize the profound lesson that every action or inaction has consequences. In situations like this, the emotional impact of neglect becomes undeniable, and the people who initially refused help are forced to confront the reality of their choices. This awareness is not just about immediate discomfort, it highlights a broader truth that behavior, especially toward family, creates ripples that affect both relationships and trust. The realization that actions have consequences can be surprisingly clarifying. For the parent, it is a reminder that life's challenges cannot always be controlled, but the way others respond to those challenges reflects their character. When the people expected to help fail to act, it underscores the importance of discerning who truly demonstrates care and reliability. This recognition shapes a more realistic understanding of family dynamics and reinforces the need to balance expectation with observation of actual behavior. Emotionally, this lesson brings a mixture of validation and empowerment. After facing uncertainty, vulnerability, and abandonment, the parent sees clearly that their persistence and courage are not in vain. The refusal of help does not define their strength, instead, it highlights it. The consequences faced by those who initially chose inaction become an indirect affirmation of the parent's responsibility and resilience, reinforcing the sense that integrity and dedication to the children carry far more weight than empty promises or unfulfilled expectations. This awareness also carries practical implications. Understanding that actions or their absence have real effects encourages the parent to make decisions about the future with greater clarity. It becomes easier to identify who can be trusted in critical moments and who may only offer lip service. This knowledge is not rooted in bitterness but in experience, shaping how relationships are navigated moving forward. The lessons learned create a framework for prioritizing reliable support and ensuring that the twins' well-being is protected no matter what. Moreover, the recognition of consequences brings a quiet sense of justice. There is no need for revenge or dramatics, because the natural outcome of neglect has already revealed itself. Discomfort, accountability, and awareness emerge naturally in response to inaction, and the parent observes this with a sense of calm satisfaction. It becomes clear that integrity and responsibility carry their own rewards, and that those who fail to act appropriately will inevitably confront the results of their choices. Through this understanding, the parent internalizes a critical principle. Life's hardships may expose weaknesses in others, but they also reveal the strength, resilience, and dedication that define personal character. The consequences of others' actions, or lack thereof, serve as both a caution and a confirmation that perseverance and responsibility are ultimately recognized and respected. Amid the turmoil and the emotional roller coaster of facing surgery and arranging care for the twins, there comes a subtle shift from anger or frustration toward a sense of justice and relief. The parent begins to realize that the situation, while painful, has revealed truths that might not have been apparent otherwise. It is not about vengeance or holding grudges, rather, it is about the quiet satisfaction that comes from seeing accountability unfold naturally. The refusal of support is no longer a private wound, but a moment that has highlighted responsibility, resilience, and the consequences of neglect. This feeling of justice emerges not through dramatic confrontation but through observation. The discomfort, hesitation, or unease in those who initially refused help serves as its own form of acknowledgement. There is no need for the parent to force a lesson or demand recognition. The situation itself, along with the calm, poised handling of it, communicates the truth. Seeing others confronted by the natural results of their choices provides a sense of balance that had been missing during the initial shock and disappointment. At the same time, relief begins to take root. Despite the challenges and the looming surgery, the parent can finally shift focus toward what matters most: the twins and their immediate well-being. The turbulence of wondering whether the children would be cared for by the very people expected to help has passed, and the parent now sees that the stability needed has either been provided by someone dependable or will be arranged independently. This clarity allows a reduction in anxiety because the emotional burden of betrayal is no longer carrying the weight it once did. The sense of justice and relief also reinforces personal strength. The parent recognizes that their ability to endure stress, to organize care for the twins under difficult circumstances, and to navigate the emotional complexities of family dynamics is itself a form of empowerment. No matter how others respond, the parent has demonstrated courage, resourcefulness, and commitment, qualities that cannot be taken away by anyone else's refusal or indifference. Emotionally, this shift creates space for focus, calm, and preparation. Instead of being consumed by resentment or disappointment, the parent can direct energy toward practical tasks such as finalizing plans for the twins, preparing for surgery, and managing recovery. The recognition that justice has quietly manifested allows the parent to carry a sense of moral satisfaction, alongside the practical assurance that their children's well-being is secured. In this way, the painful experience transforms into a moment of affirmation, highlighting resilience, integrity, and the natural consequences of choices without needing any dramatic resolution. With the immediate crisis addressed and the difficult family dynamics laid bare, a sense of relief begins to settle over the parent, centered on the knowledge that the twins are being cared for and loved despite the earlier refusal of help. This relief is profound because it comes from a recognition that, even in the face of betrayal or neglect, the children's safety and emotional stability remain intact. The parent can finally breathe a little easier, knowing that the most important responsibility, the well-being of the twins, is being upheld. The sense of security for the children brings more than practical comfort, it provides emotional reassurance as well. Parents often internalize worry when they feel their children might be left unsupported, especially during a period when their own capacity is temporarily reduced due to surgery or recovery. That constant tension, which had been quietly growing alongside stress and disappointment, begins to ease, knowing that someone trustworthy has stepped in, or that arrangements have been successfully made, creates a mental space where the parent can focus on their own health and recovery without guilt or constant anxiety. This relief is amplified by observing how the twins respond to care and attention from others. Children are highly perceptive, and even small gestures of support, love, and routine can signal stability to them. Seeing the twins engaged, happy, or comforted reinforces the parent's understanding that they are in capable hands. That visual confirmation brings both emotional calm and a renewed sense of confidence in the solutions that have been arranged, helping the parent feel less burdened by the situation as a whole. At the same time, this moment allows the parent to reflect on the resilience of the children. Even amidst sudden changes in routine or the absence of expected caregivers, the twins continue to thrive under careful guidance. This reinforces a deeper understanding that, while family support is important, the love, attention, and structure provided by those who step forward can make all the difference. It is a lesson in adaptability, both for the parent and for the children, and underscores the importance of intentional care during times of uncertainty. The emotional relief also extends to the parent's own readiness for surgery. With the twins secure, the parent can focus on preparing mentally and physically for the procedure, knowing that worry about their children will not consume every thought. The feeling of assurance creates a sense of balance between responsibility and self-care, making it easier to face the upcoming challenge with clarity and calm. This combination of practical resolution and emotional stability is crucial in transforming what had been a period of stress, uncertainty, and betrayal into one of confidence, care, and preparedness for the next chapter. As the parent begins to experience relief from knowing the twins are being cared for, another powerful emotion starts to take root: gratitude. This gratitude is nuanced and complex, shaped by the journey through stress, disappointment, and the eventual presence of support when it was most needed. It is not simply a casual or polite feeling, it is profound because it arises from the contrast between what was expected and what actually occurred. Having faced neglect or refusal, the presence of someone stepping in, even quietly or in a small way, takes on extraordinary significance. Gratitude in this context is layered. On one level, it reflects appreciation for practical assistance. Someone has taken on responsibilities that the parent could not manage alone due to the upcoming surgery, ensuring that the twins' routines continue, meals are prepared, and emotional comfort is maintained. These actions directly reduce immediate stress and make it possible for the parent to focus on recovery and preparation for the procedure. The relief that accompanies this practical support deepens the sense of gratitude, because it is not just helpful, it is essential. On a deeper level, gratitude emerges from the recognition of human empathy and care. When someone steps forward to help during a vulnerable moment, it demonstrates understanding and compassion. The parent recognizes that this intervention is not just about logistics, it is about emotional support, reassurance, and presence. The ability of another person to respond with attentiveness and reliability creates a sense of connection that strengthens emotional resilience. It validates the parent's experience and reinforces the notion that even in the face of disappointment, some people truly respond when needed. Gratitude also brings clarity and perspective. The parent begins to see the situation in a broader light, acknowledging that while some family members failed to act, others have proven dependable. This contrast highlights the importance of discerning who can be trusted and fosters a more realistic understanding of relationships. The emotional energy previously consumed by disappointment and worry can now shift toward appreciation and focus on what truly matters: the well-being of the twins, and the parents' recovery. Finally, gratitude becomes a stabilizing force. It transforms anxiety and stress into acknowledgement and calm, allowing the parent to move forward with confidence. It is a quiet, steady feeling that reinforces strength, perseverance, and hope. By embracing this gratitude, the parent not only honors the support received, but also cultivates emotional resilience that will carry through the surgery and recovery, ensuring that the twins remain cared for and that the parent can face the challenge ahead with a sense of preparedness, peace, and emotional balance. As the parent reflects on the entire journey, from the initial fear of surgery to the refusal of help and finally to the unexpected support that arrived, an overarching sense of empowerment begins to take hold. This empowerment is subtle but profound, emerging from the combination of personal resilience, practical problem-solving, and the emotional clarity gained through the experience. It is not the loud triumph of a dramatic victory, but a steady, quiet recognition that the parent has navigated a deeply challenging situation with strength and composure. This empowerment starts with the realization that, despite the refusal of care from those who were expected to step in, the parent was able to identify alternatives and take decisive action. Organizing care for the twins under the pressure of an impending surgery required careful planning, emotional regulation, and resourcefulness. Each small decision, from arranging reliable supervision to maintaining the children's daily routines, reinforced the parents' confidence in their own abilities. The act of stepping up in the face of adversity confirms that capability is not dependent on the support of others, but on one's own determination and adaptability. Emotionally, the parent feels stronger because they have endured disappointment, isolation, and the anxiety of vulnerability. The refusal of support initially felt like a personal failure of family loyalty, but overcoming that setback demonstrates resilience. The experience reinforces the understanding that adversity reveals character, and handling the situation effectively validates both the parent's skill and emotional fortitude. This recognition fuels a sense of control over circumstances that initially seemed overwhelming. The empowerment also stems from the moral clarity gained through the ordeal. By witnessing the consequences of inaction in others and comparing it with their own consistent care and responsibility, the parent gains confidence in the values that guide them. They see the difference between hollow promises or neglect and meaningful action, which strengthens their judgment about who can be trusted and relied upon in future challenges. This clarity reduces uncertainty and reinforces the parent's capacity to make wise, confident decisions. Finally, the sense of empowerment is intertwined with gratitude and relief. The parent acknowledges the support that did appear while simultaneously embracing their own strength and managing the situation. This combination allows them to face the upcoming surgery with a level of focus and calm that would have been impossible earlier in the journey. The experience becomes not just a test of endurance but a reaffirmation of competence, resilience, and the ability to protect and provide for the twins under the most difficult circumstances, solidifying an enduring sense of inner strength and self-reliance. In conclusion, this journey, from the anxiety of preparing for surgery through the unexpected refusal of help to the eventual arrival of support, has been a powerful lesson in resilience, responsibility, and the true meaning of family. It has shown that even in moments of vulnerability and disappointment, strength can emerge, solutions can be found, and the well-being of those we love can be safeguarded. The experience has highlighted the importance of self-reliance, the value of dependable support, and the quiet satisfaction that comes from facing challenges with courage and composure. It reminds us that adversity often reveals character, teaches important truths about relationships, and strengthens our capacity to navigate life with grace and determination. I wish all of you the courage to face your own challenges with unwavering strength, the clarity to recognize who truly supports you, and the resilience to overcome setbacks with dignity. May you always find the inner power to rise above difficulties, protect those you love, and emerge stronger than before. Thank you for listening and sharing this moment with me. Your attention and presence mean more than words can express, and I am deeply grateful for the opportunity to share this story of challenge, growth, and quiet triumph.